What's going on, wrestling fans? You are now tuned in to the PA Power Podcast. I'm Jeff Upson. I'm joined tonight, special guest Dustin Hockensmith of PennLive. Dustin, I know you're getting ready for the Trojan Wars, and I'm getting ready for Powerade, but our paths are kind of crossing a little bit with some coverage, and we've got a lot of other tournaments to look forward to. The Hurricane Classic, we've got the Buckskin Classic at Conestoga Valley. So, Dustin, first of all, what have you been up to, and what are you looking forward to this weekend?
Well, I got the extra 2-pound allowance in my household too after the holiday, so I'm enjoying that part of it. Did a little extra eating. Instead of 2,000 calories on Christmas Day, I did 4,000 just because I had to. I had to with that. But yeah, it's a really cool time in the wrestling season where you shift gears, you start looking forward, you get the 2 pounds, you start to get a good feel right around this time this week of who's going to fall where weight wise, and obviously a lot of big opportunities with all these different tournaments for guys to level up and kind of show what they've been doing and take their game to another level.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, it's funny you say that because I'm actually going to be releasing updated rankings tomorrow just based on the drops that we've seen through pre-seeds and tournament entries. Just because that way you have a legitimate look at who is where. Louis Gill, state champs, dropping down to 106. Carl Schindeldecker from Chambersburg dropped down to 126. So those are guys that I think fans want to see where they're at in these big holiday tournaments. So, and I think it's important, when you have those guys in the right weight classes, kind of looking at and saying, all right, this is where so-and-so is coming into this tournament. So we're only updating our state rankings for AA and AAA before Tuesday or before Wednesday when most of our big tournaments kick off. But right now, I mean, we have the Southmoreland Holiday Classic going on right now. We have the Newport tournament took place today. Tomorrow, the Hurricane Classic kicks off, but I know there was a few teams that had to pull out because of COVID. And we're going to talk about it later tonight at 9 o'clock, Greg and I, on the War Up podcast. But Powerades, the fact of the matter is teams are getting shut down because of COVID, right? We're seeing it happen time and time again. We're seeing it in professional sports. I just saw the Penguins are out like 6 guys, and the NHL is pausing their Christmas break, if you will, and so it's only inevitable that this is going to trickle down to high school sports. So especially when you have these large tournaments happening across the state, it's only a matter of time to who's going to actually fall out. And unfortunately, we just got to roll with the punches and figure out who's who, and who's gonna show up and who's gonna wrestle, right? But I know you will be there at the Trojan Wars. Let's talk a little bit about the My House Trojan Wars and what it's about. It's been going on. I think this is the 7th year. Does that sound right, Dustin? About 7 years running.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I'd have to ask Matt Menser for specifics on that one. But it is a cool tournament that you see these things breaking up. You got the Hurricane Classic. That's a lot of the Lehigh Valley and the eastern part of the state. You've got obviously Powerade, teams from the east too, but a lot of teams from the west. And this, Trojan Wars is the south central part of Pennsylvania. And the neat element of it is that you are getting teams from Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and even a couple from Delaware in there. So it's got a little different style to it. It's got a little different, some matchups and some unknowns, and kind of stacking up where Pennsylvania is against some of these better kids. Some place winners from these other states too. So that's the cool, unique thing about Trojan Wars. And what I'm looking forward to seeing is some of these out-of-state guys too.
And you talked about the out-of-state guys, and there's a lot of them. Mainly West Virginia, Maryland, and Virginia, right? Teams that are coming from there. Is there any team in particular that you're saying, hey, we should watch out for from out of state?
So St. Christopher's from Virginia, I think, is pretty good. You look at the pre-seeds and you see a few through there. Smyrna from Delaware, also a pretty good team too. But otherwise, I use Pennsylvania guys as a benchmark for how good these other teams are. So I'll be kind of going with the knowns there with the PA kids and seeing how these other guys stack up. But it'll be fun.
So from Pennsylvania, teams such as Boiling Springs, Lewisburg is going to be there, West Perry, Baltimore area. So there was a few. Let's start at 106, Dustin. Matt Dolan from Spring Mills, West Virginia. He's your top seed there. I've got to see him on a different occasions and super tough wrestler. Major Lewis is the second seed from Trinity. Jace Gessner from Lewisburg drops down to 106. He's your fourth seed. Corey Walls from Tyrone is your fifth seed. So 106, Major Lewis, I feel like he's been at 106 for 3 years now, because he has, is he able to break out? That's the question I have is Major Lewis able to get a tournament title under his belt? Because I feel like he's always been kind of in the mix with a lot of tournaments, but never quite the guy. And you probably know him better than I do, but that just seems like the gist of Major Lewis is he's close, but just not quite there yet.
I mean, that's the storyline for this bracket in this tournament. You saw Major Lewis pin his way to winning the Carlisle tournament and getting a couple good kids along the way there. So I felt like what he did a couple weeks ago was, as close to a breakout as we've seen. And now, you're going to get a little bit more depth at Trojan Wars. It's going to be a bigger opportunity for him. Competing as a junior at 106, you would hope that experience at that weight class can start to pay off for him. And it really looks like it's starting to. This is a kid who, really struggled with masks last year. Had a condition where it really harmed him physically to compete with the mask on. And so maybe that kind of delayed the true breakout for him, which, I think is happening right before our eyes here. Would not surprise me one bit if he is pretty dominant on his way to winning this tournament too.
You go up to 113 pounds, another guy who we get to see back in action and kind of in his back in his regular groove is Devin Jackson of West Perry, a guy who kind of took the state by storm 2 years ago. Last year doesn't compete. This year he's down to 113. But he's going to have his hands full there. You got Lucas Five from Baltimore area, who I was very impressed with at the Trojan or at the King of the Mountain, made it to the finals there at King of the Mountain. Rylan Carter from Chambersburg, he's dropping down. So what do you make of this West Perry team, specifically Devin Jackson, Dustin, and how good they can be, kind of led by the state medalist, Devin Jackson?
Yeah, I mean, a couple state medalists. Nolan Ziegler is at 138 pounds. We'll touch on him then. Jackson Rush pinned a district champion a couple weeks ago. He's a freshman at 120 pounds. Ty Morrison is the younger brother of Brad Morrison, who's at 215, who would not surprise me if he's a state medalist this year. Justice Hockenberry Folk is 160 pounds. He wrestled in a state tournament 2 years ago. I think West Perry's been building to get this team together, and they have a little splash of young talent coming along to fill out their lineup. Devin Jackson is a really interesting case because you have a kid who's super strong, super tough. He's a double amputee. He contracted meningitis when I think he was 8. We've told that story a lot around here, but I'm not sure if everybody at a state level knows about it. But what it does is you have a tough kid who knows how to wrestle, and you have to wrestle his style. And so sometimes in a situation like this where he hasn't wrestled a lot of these kids, you have AAA teams, you have teams from out of state. How do you adapt to his style with the, low on the mat, and you have no choice but to be in his wheelhouse. So it's good to see him back healthy again. He had to scratch out of last year's postseason because he had health issues. He had health complications through the summer, just his situation. And so, he hit the ground running to start this year. He challenged himself. He wrestled Caden Williams a couple weeks ago. He's lost a couple times already, but I think he's as well positioned to make a postseason run as ever. Knock on wood that he can stay healthy and not have to deal with that as the season goes on.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that he took a few losses, and I think you're right. He has challenged himself, and he's had challenges in his own room too. He's had some guys that were pushing him, his own teammates. So I think that's obviously a good sign for him that he's able to continue pushing and getting better. Like I said, Lucas Five from Baltimore area really impressed me at King of the Mountain for him to get there. And Rylan Carter's coming down, the whole shift from Chambersburg, who's hosting the tournament, by the way, that shift down with Menser coming down, Schindeldecker coming down, and now Rylan Carter sitting at number 3 seed at 113 pounds. So I think that's a pretty deep bracket if you look at it from top to bottom. When you go up to 120, this is where you talk about Smyrna from Delaware and how tough they are. Mason Leapart's here, but he's not the top seed. He's the number 2 seed. He drops from 126 to 120. What's the skinny on our friend Gabe from Delaware?
Well, I don't know much about him at this point, but if you have a kid who is a state medalist from Pennsylvania who's the number 2 seed, then Gabe can wrestle, and we know that. If the seeding holds true, and we do get Leapart versus Gabe in the final there, it'll be an interesting matchup, because it's always an interesting matchup with Leapart, because he is such a free flowing, funky, is able to scramble. It was good to see him last year get that monkey off his back a little bit and get on the state podium. You know, he was 2 and out as a sophomore a couple years ago. So I really like what we've seen early in the year from Mason Leapart, and really want to see, this kid from Delaware wrestle Leapart in the final there, and see what he's made of there too. But I think Mason Leapart is really positioned to make a deep postseason run, and I think he's been in pretty much top form since the beginning of the year. Now making that drop, he looked pretty strong at 126.
Yeah, he did.
I think he's going to be very, very strong. Even physically strong at 120. I mean, he's going to be a really tough out in this tournament, and then certainly as we get into the postseason too.
You're not going to try to pronounce his last name, Gabe?
Gian Pietro.
Okay,
how's that?
You made it sound like, oh yeah, of course, like that's my cousin's last name. You said, I mean, I'm certainly not going to try to pronounce that name, so good for you for doing that.
Look at me and how cultured I look. I know.
Well, you're frozen. You're frozen again. So this is the second time you've been on the podcast. You're frozen again. So instead of looking at your ugly mug, we just look at it like a DH now on the back. So
that's probably an upgrade. That's probably an upgrade. If we're being honest.
Whatever you need to upgrade your internet or your Skype. Get rid of your 1999 Dell computer. Get rid of it. Get a new one. So that way we can at least see your face. I mean, it's just kind of weird me talking to a blank screen now, but it is what it is. Mason Leapart, you're right, looked really strong at 126. We saw him at the Cumberland Valley Kickoff Classic. He looked good there, so I can't imagine what he's going to look like down at 120. So you're right, he is there. Cohen Baney is also there. Cohen Baney is a guy who last year was a state medalist for Baltimore area. This year, he's been in the mix, but he hasn't quite gotten over the hump quite yet. Has not won a major tournament such as King of Mountain yet. So I think this is a good stage for him to see where he's at, especially at this weight class. So again, you look at the quality of talent here. You got 3 guys right off the bat, and that's not even mentioning the folks from outside of Pennsylvania, Ryan Athey from South Carroll and Bryson Arbogast from Benedict College in Virginia. Luke Menser sitting at a number 7 or 6, and Braxton Rice down at 7. So I think 120 has a lot of depth here at the Trojan Wars, but probably not as much as 126. 126 is pretty stacked. And we're led off with Carl Schindeldecker from Chambersburg, another guy who you said, kind of got the monkey off his back, even though he was 3rd in the state as a freshman. It was really good to see him get back onto the podium last year. Was a runner-up to Mac Church last year at the state tournament. He's your top seed here. So I think Carl is a guy who's poised to do well here. He was on our True Power card. We got to see him and got to know him a little bit. And I think he's a guy who just, when he wants to wrestle, he wrestles hard. And, the Trojan Wars, I think, is a place for him to break out, especially down at 126. He had been up at 132 for a little bit. But there's this is a deep weight class. You go all the way down, to the top 10 seeds here. All these guys are pretty tough. Michael Pizzuto from South Carroll, Maryland is your 2nd seed. Caden Milham from Warrior Run is your 3rd seed. Eli Bounds from Boyden Springs is your 4. Jake Neal, Central Bucks South is your 5th. And AJ Staten from Souderton was at Faith Christian. Now he's at Souderton. He was a 2-time state qualifier. He's your 6th seed. So 126, like 120, has a lot of depth.
A lot of depth here. Would surprise me if Schindeldecker doesn't make a big splash here at 126 and work his way to the top of the podium there. Really like what he did last year, and it was just the year before as a sophomore he was wrestling with expectations, and it's a struggle I think sometimes to grow into a place where you came from way off the radar to get bronze as a freshman at 113 a few years ago. Now last year obviously in the state finals 2 years ago he lost to the eventual state champ, Will Betancourt from
Right.
Manheim Central at the district tournament, and then stumbled also in the consolation round there and didn't make it through. I think that kind of changed him, and you saw a real veteran's composure about him last year. I think you saw him improve from an attacking standpoint and from a defensive standpoint. He's pretty strong in that long frame of his, so um, pretty technical. I think he shifted to kind of be a little bit more attack oriented. He can funk, he can scramble, he's comfortable in uncomfortable situations. So I think what we saw last year from Carl Schindeldecker, you went into it not really sure. Okay, what's the real version of this
Right.
kid?
Where would the real Carl Schindeldecker please stand up? That's that's what I think of when I
And he
think of
did,
him.
and he did,
Yeah.
yeah, 100%. And he wrestled Mac Church really hard.
Really
Mac
tough. I
Church
mean,
was
tiebreaker match. I mean, he was right there.
Yep. And Church, Church is so good. He was the better kid in both of those situations, but Schindeldecker was right there, and I don't think he really paid too much respect to Mac Church
Mm.
either. I thought he wrestled like he belonged in those matches, and that can only help him, going into this final run here. And I like him to turn the corner here, get down to 126, and be pretty dominant down there.
Yeah, I would expect the same, kind of like him and Mason Leapart. I mean, both those guys, I think, down in that weight class, I think they're going to do well. I don't think it's going to be a hard cut. I don't think they're unnecessarily cutting weight to get down. I think both those guys probably are walk around, somewhere around there, 122 and 128. So I don't think it's going to be a too bad of a cut down. So you're right. I can't wait to see the real Carl Schindeldecker like we did last year as well. And that's why we really wanted him on our True Power card, is because, he's one of those guys that I think, third in the state as a freshman, to second in the state as a junior. And I think he's one of the top guys that no one really talks about, outside of District 3. You don't really hear a whole lot of Carl Schindeldecker. So I think it's nice to try to highlight him. 132, two guys from out of state, one from Virginia, one from Maryland, occupy the first two spots. Dyson Dunham from Benedict College is your top seed. Gage Owen, South Carroll, Maryland, is your top seed. Mason Vorvitsky from Southern Columbia. Southern Columbia, they always kind of push back their season because their football team is always in the state championship, which they won this year, right? I mean, I'm assuming they won. They always win. Am I wrong in assuming that?
I believe that they did, but I was in wrestling mode at that point.
Oh, were you? Oh, good for you. Well, Southern Columbia wrestling was not. They're holding off to they got some of the guys, even though they're losing. And thanks to our good buddy Mitch Rupert, we know that certain guys are not going to be there. So if you want to check that out, look on our Rockfin page, and you can see Mitch Rupert's preview of Southern Columbia and how they're not going to have Derek Berlitz. And one of the five Garcia brothers, they will have one, just not the other. So if you go back,
this tournament's not the same without a Garcia.
It's
in
not.
it too.
Well,
I mean,
well, there will be a Garcia. It's just it's not the Garcia that you're. It's not the Garcia that you thought. It's going to be Garrett, not Gavin. Gage is at Lehigh now. Gavin's going to Kent State, and Garrett Garcia is going to be wrestling at 172. So, and Derek Berlitz is also not going to be there, although he had never been at Southern Columbia. He was at Notre Dame Green Pond before that. So don't sidetrack me. 132, Barvitsky is a guy who I really like. Last year had a good year. But outside of that, it's pretty wide open. Bodie Rouser's down at 7. Ivan Vega, who I got to see at the Panther Holiday Classic, really impressed me. He was banged up. He looked like he was in a war after the Panther Holiday Classic. He's your 60. I think he's going to surprise some people. I would not be surprised to see him in the finals, or at least in the semifinals. So looking forward to seeing how 132 shakes out, because I don't really know much about Dunham and Owen. So I've seen Gage Owen before. Dunham I haven't seen before. So
it'll be that layer there with Ivan Vega, Bodie Rouser, who's coming down to 132. Eli Gregoris from Big Spring too has
I
done a
can't believe
lot of
Eli
wrestling.
Gregoris is at 132. Didn't he wrestle 106 last year? He was, or at least 113. He's up in weight, and I thought for sure we'd see him down at 126 by now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think he's steering into being a little bit bigger and stronger, and we'll see. I mean, maybe he hit a growth spurt. I haven't seen him in person yet this season so far. This will be my first chance down there in Chambersburg, but he's done a lot of wrestling. He's won some postseason matches. He is not a bad kid. So it's like if these out of state kids come in, I mean, they're gonna have to beat some pretty seasoned Pennsylvania guys if they're gonna maintain those top seeds. And curious to see what Mason Barbitsky can do. Specifically if he sees Gage Owen there in the semis.
Yeah.
But yeah, that group, the 6, 7, 8 seeds, I would not be surprised in this weight class if one of them knocks off a higher seed. And I know Waynesboro has high hopes for Bodie Rouser and his brother Caden Rouser. They're seniors who just haven't quite put it all together yet. And I know the coaching staff there thinks that this is the year that they do. So we'll see.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about the Rousers for a long time, and you're right. It seems like they've been around for a really long time, but have they been able to put it together? Right, that's the question. If we thought 132 was stacked, 138 is stacked to the. I mean, it's the toughest bracket in my opinion of the tournament. So you got Dom Findor at the top, Downtown West, state fourth last year, going to Drexel. He's one of the best in the state. We saw him at the Cumberland Valley Kickoff Classic win there. Garrett Gear from Garden Spot, down from 145, state qualifier last year. Reese Pollock from Redland, he's your number 3. Nolan Ziegler, West Perry, 4. Kelly Kakos for Perkiomen Valley, who was a state medalist last year, 8th in the state. He's your 5th seed. Then you go down even further. 6th seed is Coben Carper from Bullion Springs. Max Parnas is all the way down at 10. He's from Westchester East. This is a stacked bracket here, but I don't know if anyone's in the same category as Dom Findora. He's just a different breed. I think he's just, not saying Gare can't hang with him, but Findora is he's on a different level, in my opinion, just this year and seeing him across the season.
Yeah, to me, I mean, it's just watching everybody else outside of Dom Findora. And that's no disrespect to any of these other guys, but looking at, 2 through 6 for sure, I don't know that there's a clear-cut pecking order. I know you have your seating there, but Nolan Ziegler's a state medalist. Coben Carper, I think, has the ability to hit the state podium, just needs to kind of put it together too, and he didn't do that last postseason, but he did have a nice win or two along the way. So yeah, not much would surprise me other than Dom Findora not winning it pretty convincingly. I know these are all good kids, but I do agree that Findora is on a different level. I could see a win by bonus points in the final here, but a lot of good competition to get to that point. Not much would surprise me when it comes to seeing who he's opposite in the final.
I'm not so worried about I want to see where a guy like Kelly Kakos kind of finishes, or even Coben Carper, and see where they're at, because this is a very, like you said, deep, and it's the pecking order, right? Is Gare really going to be as good as we expect him to be? Garden Spot just doesn't quite get the coverage or the exposure as another team like Downtown West does. Even West Perry's gotten a ton of attention recently just because of how tough their team is, and they've been around wrestling a lot this summer. I've seen more West Perry wrestlers this summer than I think I've ever seen. So it just goes to show.
Sometimes you get these Lancaster Lebanon teams that don't really get into the rest of District 3 all that much, or even outside that area. They stay maybe a little bit more regional a lot of times. So to see Garden Spot come into this tournament will be a really good indicator, not just now for Garrett Gear, but looking forward to, and being able to kind of find some common opponents. There are a lot of times where you just don't know what to make of kids from the LL, because they haven't intermingled quite like West Perry's been crazy busy.
They have
to start the season, and they've wrestled against AAA competition. They've wrestled, Newport, who's in your state rankings. They've wrestled some good kids already. So you have a pretty good feel for where they are. I'm just not quite sure yet with Garrett Gear, but you do have, in his case, pretty good postseason track record.
Yeah, that the intermingling part is so true, and for somebody who does rankings, intermingling is phenomenal. I
It's
love
huge. Yeah.
intermingling. The CDC does not, but Jeff Upson does. It
How
is
topical was that reference? So topical.
so topical. But you're right. The LL doesn't always, not. I'm not. This isn't a blanket statement, but it seems like maybe in years past, not always hitting some of the top competition in the state, right? So I'm excited to see where some of these guys land, especially with the Trojan Wars being as deep as it is. 145, Caden Wagner from Lewisburg, a guy we saw also at the Cumberland Valley Kickoff Classic. He's your top seed here. State medalist last year. He lost to Connor Hare from Montgomery in the finals there. So they're both dropped down. Keegan Judd from Shenandoah, Virginia. He's your second seed. Looking outside of Pennsylvania, they occupy the top or the three of the top four seeds here. Caden Rouser, who you had mentioned, his younger brother Bodie being the fifth seed here. Where's he going to end up? Right. I look at a guy like Reese Wood from Tyrone, who I got to see at the Panther Holiday Classic. Same with Garrett Pyridis from Selinsgrove. I got to see him at the Panther Holiday, and impressive. But Caden Wagner, kind of like Dom Pandoris, is here, and it's like where do you fall? With some of these other guys like Keegan Judd, right, or Kale Raji from St. Christopher. St. Christopher's always has a tough team, so I expect them to be, pretty tough. But Chance Williams from Spring Mills, West Virginia, can a guy like Garrett Paradis hang with him? But outside of kind of like 138, Caden Wagner seems to be the guy here to be going after.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the only real hope, and again, no disrespect to the PA kids, but it's just kind of having these kids from out of state where they're unknown commodities, and having them try to stack up with Caden Wagner, because otherwise, he does look like he's a pretty clear cut above everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, again, no disrespect, but the Caden Rouser and Caden Wagner, a lot of Cadens here. They're just in two different brackets, right? Two different levels, and not to say that you're not gonna be able to push him, because I think you probably will be able to, but Caden Wagner is just the clear-cut one here, right? And that kind of goes with the same notion up at 152 with Michael Dugan. Michael Dugan dropping down from 160 to 152. He took a loss to Gannon Smith from Newport last week. He's down now at 152, where he's the top seed, state medalist, going to Bucknell. And Brogan Teeter of Shenandoah from Virginia, he is your second seed. I think, again, Dugan, looking at some of the other guys from Pennsylvania, Deegan Ross is down there at 8. Kelton Bruner from Strathaven is 3. But really, Dugan, for his resume and his credentials, no one should be touching him in my opinion.
I would agree with that too. I think the story to watch is, okay, so now he's dropping down from 160 to 152. How much can you kind of discount that loss to Gannon Smith, who was a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger than him? He was losing at the time. He wrestled a really entertaining match at the CV Kickoff Classic.
That was the best match of the finals.
The best match of the finals for sure, where he was trailing 5-0 and battled his way back to force overtime.
That was great.
Just kind of ran out of steam at that point in time. But you've seen him thrive. I mean, those two losses, I think, are the two very different setbacks that he can kind of use to fuel him going forward. So now he's down to 152, and we should see the best version of Michael Dugan. That's the story I'm watching from a statewide angle is, okay, Michael Dugan, you've taken those couple of losses. How are you using them to go forward? And how big of a factor are you going to be at 152 pounds? Really good bet, I think, to be in the state finals. He was a bronze medalist last year. Looks like if he gets better from those losses, this could be a springboard type effect down there if he's pretty dominant on his way to winning this thing, which I think he will be.
Yeah, I mean, again, how is the weight cut, right? Because we see it all the time where guys just, they're cutting weight and it's not going well, and it affects them. So I don't think he's going to have any problem making 154. Shouldn't really have much of an issue there. So yeah, I agree. He's head and shoulders above of the rest of the field here. But can you brush and put that loss to Gannon Smith in the rear view and just focus on what's in front of you. And that's it's easy to say that, right? But it's a lot harder to execute that when you're getting down the brass tacks. 160 pounds. I cannot believe Wesley Barnes from Southern Columbia is down to 160 pounds. He wrestled 189 pounds last year. Dustin, if you're looking for a weight loss plan, call your boy Wesley Barnes, because apparently he's got it. Now, he was an undersized one. I didn't hear any laughing, so I'm assuming that you took offense to that joke.
I
can't see you. Remember,
so,
you're just a blank
I know.
screen on my. So I mean, you could be laughing.
I was smiling so big. So yeah, I think that's great. I'm gonna look for Wesley Barnes. He will be essentially my twin brother, except I've got more pounds on him than I.
He does
have
red. He does. You both have red hair. Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. So cool.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, and
is there like a secret society? Do you guys like have like membership cards and stuff like that, or is it just like, hey, you see him, and is it like one of those Jeep things where you like wave to the other Jeep? Is that a thing?
Well, our membership card is basically if you're at a beach and you see somebody else with a shirt on, that's another redhead. That's the club we're in.
Following. I'm picking up what you're putting down, Dustin.
Yeah, but I mean, so what Wesley Barnes, he's a big story, I think, in this one. Okay, what is the situation? What is the story? So if he was undersized last year, wrestling 189, he probably had to move around a bit to find a starting spot. Maybe he's comfortable here. I mean, to me, it brings back, and it's fitting that it's at Chambersburg. You remember with Luke Nichter?
Yeah.
He was a freshman wrestling 170, finished his career wrestling 160, and now he's wrestling
college.
149.
149.
Yeah. And he's 6 feet tall too. So yeah, I'm curious what the story is here. Maybe he just feels comfortable. I mean, in Luke Nichter's case, his metabolism was just lightning. And maybe it's the same thing with Wesley Barnes, where he was comfortable at this weight all along. He just had to move up a bit to find a starting spot.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I do think that Barnes coming down, like a lot of people were surprised, but he was fourth in the state twice. He finished fourth his freshman year at 152. Yeah, it was 152. So 152 to 189's, that's a big jump, right? But he also played football. So him wrestling 189, yeah, it was maybe he was undersized, and maybe he was more undersized than we thought. But I mean, my gosh, going from 189 to 160. That's pretty big, right? And I'm sure the Garcias had something to do with that. Like, I don't know what it's like in the room between them and who would have won, and would he have had to bump up versus going back down, and maybe for the team it just was better. And yeah, I mean, you just never know what a situation is like. But Wesley Barnes is your top seed at 160 pounds. Chase Barlow from Strathaven, he's back. He's wrestling at 160 pounds. He's a returning state medalist. He is your second seed from Strathaven. Zane Cox from Benedict College, Virginia, is your third. Cade Bradbury from Washington, West Virginia, is your fourth. Jacob Cherry from Gettysburg is your fifth. Ben Beckett from Souderton is sixth. So, I think Barnes and Barlow are the two guys that I'm keeping an eye on, but I'm not discounting some of those other guys who are down there, like Jacob Cherry from Gettysburg, or even Robbie Schneider from Lackawanna Trail, who I've been impressed with for a couple years now. So, I don't know exactly what the criteria is on the seating, but I'm curious to know what Zane Cox and Bradbury have in their resumes, because Robbie Schneider is pretty tough, and he's a 7 seed. So, but Barlow and Barnes are the guys here that I'm really looking forward to.
And most deserving 1 and 2 seeds for sure. Wesley Barnes, his formula, he's physical and he's strong, and that formula allowed him to be so competitive at 189 pounds. If he maintains that formula at 160, we could be in for a really interesting ride with him. And so this will be, some of the first action for him, to start this season. And he's my guy to beat, assuming he's fresh and conditioned and high energy at 160 pounds. I'm curious to watch that weight cut in action. And this is where, that out of state thing comes in. And we talked earlier about having side-by-side examples and common opponents. No such thing exists with these 3 and 4 seeds. And so how does that factor into it? How good are Zane Cox and Cade Bradbury across state lines? Because they've got 2 really good, really strong Pennsylvania kids who are deserving at the top and the bottom of the bracket. Again, I would still be surprised if we're not seeing Wesley Barnes wrestle Chase Barlow in the final here.
Yeah, totally agree with you there. And yeah, it's a good mix, right? And I love seeing a team like Southern Columbia and Strathaven, and Barlow has not wrestled yet this year, so this will be his first real test, as is Wesley Barnes. So it's good to see them get it going here at the Trojan Wars. Logan Hoffman from Bell Vernon's your top seed at 172 pounds. He's dropping down from 189, and Garrett Garcia is your third seed. So I'm anticipating Hoffman Garcia finals, but Jagger Gray from Trinity is going to play spoiler to that somewhere along the line. He's your fifth seed, so he's going to take out somebody, right? In my opinion, he's been very, very good this offseason. I'm very high on him. I think he's got a big year ahead of him this year in 21, 22. I think he's going to have a breakout year. And I think, looking at the bracket, this is a good time for him to do that. With Garrett Garcia being your third seed, Logan Hoffman being the one. Logan Hoffman's good, don't get me wrong, but Garrett Garcia is pretty darn good. And, I think Jagger Gray is right there with him. So it's just a matter of where the chips fall and who he's going to be able to knock off, because then you have a guy like Tyler Withers from Gettysburg sitting at the 7th seed as well. I don't know much about Ryland Moose from South Carroll or Tyler Mizenzale from Washington, West Virginia, but I'm biased towards Pennsylvania, and I'm going to assume they're not very good, right? Not better than Garrett Garcia. Not to say they're not very good.
Right.
You're not better than Garrett Garcia. But again, Garcia's coming off a football season, a long football season. But there's something in their blood, man. Those Garcias, they can do sports very well, a lot better than you and I, Dustin. So, but Jagger Gray is my story. I'm really looking forward to seeing him compete in this bracket.
He's as good a sleeper pick as anybody, I think. He's well positioned there. Would probably get a shot if he makes it there at Logan Hoffman from Bell Vernon in the semifinal round, being the 5 seed on that side of the bracket. Wrestled 189 pounds last season, and he was one of those guys as Pennsylvania made that change in weight classes where, and his dad challenged the PIAA on it because his son wasn't the only one who was kind of in between. And you're looking at be going from 172 to 189. If a kid is just walking around the streets at 180 pounds, what are you supposed to do? And that is exactly where Jagger Gray was, and wasn't able to in enough time work his way down. But I think 172 pounds for his frame, he's a strong kid. He couldn't really match the length of some of those 189 pounders last year. So he's without the real accomplishment, which is why you see him as a 5 seed. But in terms of potential, he can definitely play spoiler in this weight class. And I think he still needs that breakout performance to get that resume to a point where he's not a 5 seed in the future. He's a junior now. He's not a 5 seed going forward. I think he's really, really close, and it's a good opportunity for him because this weight class is pretty open as far as I can tell. And every match you should see from the quarterfinals on should be a pretty competitive one.
Yeah, no, it's definitely. I mean, when Logan Hoffman's your top seed, it's wide open, and that's no disrespect to Logan Hoffman, but I mean, he's a regional qualifier, right? So having a guy like him, and Garrett Garcia as well, who was a state qualifier last year, he was very close with Nolan Lear. I think he lost in tiebreaker and probably a few decisions to Nolan Lear. So, I probably would say Garrett Garcia is more the favorite, but that's just, again, based on last year's results. Jagger Gray, wouldn't be surprised if he won the whole thing. So we'll see. And like you said, I love the fact that, he's always competing. I see him a lot over the summer. He was in our event, True Power, wrestled against Tucker Hogan. So, again, guy who's willing to put it out on the line and wrestle the top guys. 189, another guy from Trinity who I'm very excited to see is Tucker Painter. He's your top seed at 189. Chase Hendon from Spring Mills, who I do know and is worthy of the 2nd seed. I know I talked a lot of smack on some of those other guys from outside of Pennsylvania, but I do know Chase is tough. There's another Chase at the 3 seed, Chase Crutchley from Washington, West Virginia. He's your third seed. Seth Ross from Lackawanna Trail is your fourth. And a sleeper here for me is Diesel Kozer from Shippensburg. He's your fifth seed here. Aiden Height, no love to your own school here. Aiden Height is your seventh seed. I would think they would put Aiden Height at 6 behind Diesel Kozer, but
sometimes you overcorrect as the home seeding school.
For sure you do.
You overcorrect
to be seen. Yes. You don't want to be seen as the team that's putting their guys in a spot. So yeah, I agree.
But I mean, it's an interesting group there, right there. 5, 6, 7, and 8 for sure. All District 3 guys. But Aiden Height, I mean, he's another guy. He's a sophomore who is a breakout performance away from really getting a lot more respect at a statewide level. Diesel Kozer has done some nice things early in the season and looks like he's a real factor at 189 pounds. Boiling Springs loves Colin Neal there at 189.
Yeah, I know people are excited about him. Colin Neal is a guy who I didn't know a whole lot about, but I do know that people are excited down in Boiling Springs about him.
Yeah, and he brings a new element to the top of their lineup. They've got a pretty good group, all really 1 through 13, but brings a little bit of force there in the upper weights. But yeah, I got my eyes here on Tucker Painter also, and him as a sophomore. I wrote a story about him a couple weeks ago. Him and Brad Morrison both, who we'll talk about. Tucker Painter was trying to get to 215 pounds. This offseason. He wrestled last postseason 160.
Right.
Yes. Got up to about 200 and change. And right around that time is when he wrestled at your event, the Surge.
Yes. Yep.
And he was pinned by Brad Morrison, who he was making the jump from 189 to 215 and got hit the mark for him. But Tucker Painter, he's bigger. His frame is big. He was big for 160 last year. He looks like he's going to be, a pretty nice size 189. And this will be a nice bit of competition for him, wrestling a bunch of veteran guys. You're looking at these couple out of state guys. You're looking at Diesel Kozer's done a bunch of wrestling, Colin Neal, Aiden Height. So yeah, he's going to get a go against some guys who've wrestled some matches before. So if he comes out of this as your gold medalist, as the one who's wearing that Trojan helmet, I think he'll validate a lot of things for me. I'm pretty excited about his potential this year and moving forward. He made a nice run and wrestled really well in the postseason as a true freshman.
He did
in the upper weights last year. So I'm looking for him to kind of flip that switch and build on what he did last season and do it at a higher weight here.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you talk about the jumping in weights and getting comfortable wrestling in those weights, because we see it all the time, especially with the condensed weight classes down to 13, where we have these guys that were between 160 and 200, somewhere in that 40-pound range, where they almost were like looking for a home and like, all right, do I get up and get big and go to 189? Do I cut down and go to 172? Like, I know Matt Furman from Mac was kind of stuck in that weird in between. And I know a lot of these other guys, just were kind of stuck. Right. And, yeah, him and Brad Morrison, I think, Brad Morrison from West Perry, who is the top seed at 215, I think both these guys are looking to have breakout performances. Not that Brad Morrison hasn't had one yet, because he has, but this is a bracket where you're going to have Zach Evans, Logan Herbst, Stephen Miller, Sam Rodriguez. 215 to me is a very stacked weight class. Brad Morrison kind of the leader of that pack, but Zach Evans is not far behind. Zach Evans was on our national freestyle dual teams that we took out to Jersey, and I was very impressed with him. Really impressed with just his work ethic, and the kid likes to wrestle at all times. So I'm really excited to see how he's going to be able to compete in this bracket. Same with Logan Herbst. I saw him at Panther Holiday, and I was impressed with him. Stephen Miller, Steelens Grove, won over 30 matches last year, and Sam Rodriguez from Gettysburg. Those top 5 seeds at 215 pounds are very solid. So you got to give it up for the 215 pounders, Dustin. Would that be your weight class if you were to wrestle right now?
I'd have to do a little bit of a cut to get there, but I'm not wrestling.
217. Yeah, you gave you 2 pounds, so like 217, right? You could do that.
Yeah, I'm not that far off. I'd have to cut less than 10 pounds.
We'll get the plastics out. We'll get you down.
Yeah, I'll be able to get down. Now, would I want to wrestle Brad Morrison? Absolutely not.
Hell
but
no.
I wouldn't want to wrestle any of these guys. But yeah, Brad Morrison, I think he's always got an ace up his sleeve because he is very, very good from the top.
Yeah.
And he's long, and it just feels like he's everywhere. And that part of his game will travel with him no matter what weight class. But at 215, where you're talking about guys who aren't not super fast in general, it's comparing them to 189 pounders. Brad Morrison's combination, his recipe, I think, is going to work. Now, when you say breakout, it's not, a true breakout. It's more like wrestling tough kids and wrestling these tight matches. Can he go from losing a 3-2 match and sudden victory or tiebreaker? Can he be on the winning side of those tight decisions against really good kids? That's what we're looking to see here. And he could very well get that opportunity with the depth of this weight class. And, you look at a Sam Rodriguez as the 5 seed there, and somebody who, if he puts it all together, if he finds his consistency, if he doesn't have the ups and the downs, the peaks and the valleys, if the best version of Sam Rodriguez shows up, he is a tall, athletic 215 who's capable of beating a lot of guys. Zach Evans, the 2 seed. Now, the last I talked to him, he was a Fargo All-American, and his intentions were to wrestle 285 this year, and that plan changed somewhere between Fargo and here. So wrestling 215, he'll be a tough out for anybody there. He's another guy. He's a junior now, who I think could make a run, whether it's at 215 or 285, whether it's this season or next season, could make a run at a state medal at some point. And, I think there's a few guys in that same conversation at 215 down at Trojan Wars.
For sure. And I would agree with the Zach Evans assessment, because he's a guy who, coming up through the PJW ranks, like he was always close, right? He was always there. But you had mentioned it. Sam Rodriguez is a guy who I'm very high on. Last year, he had a really good season. He's a 2-time regional qualifier. 50 wins in his career. He's undefeated this year. I'm a big fan of Sam Rodriguez. Logan Herbst, same thing, kind of a guy who was a 2-time regional qualifier in the mix. But really it's anyone's, I wouldn't say it's wide open, because Brad Morrison is clearly the guy here, but Zach Evans is going to be, he's looking to move up in the rankings. He's had last year had some losses, that he probably wanted back, but, you look at the South Central Regional, you got Jose Garcia from JP McCaskey, you got Sam Rodriguez, Ryan McMillan, Travis Armstrong from CD East. It's like, okay, if I'm Zach Evans, I'm feeling pretty good, because I can hang with those guys. I can mix it up with them, and figure out.
He's as accomplished as any of them. When it comes to wrestling,
you don't
achievement.
Yeah, you don't win a Fargo All-American. You don't come home with a stop sign and not be in those conversations. But based on the rankings, Jose Garcia is a guy who, last year had a really good year. And even Sam Rodriguez, Ryan McMillan, who has just been, nipping and close. So I think he's going to be right in there with the best of them. So Zach Evans, yeah, does he have something to prove? Maybe, but I still think, like you said, regardless of what happens this weekend, I think he's going to have a good year this year and next year. Sam Rodriguez, go ahead.
In terms of trying to learn, from both the district and maybe seeing a few of these guys at Giant Center in March, this weight class is going to be, as good as any in terms of figuring some things out. With Zach Evans, Logan Herbst, and Sam Rodriguez, the pecking order in the AAA District 3, but also with Brad Morrison, wrestling all these different AAA guys. He's surrounded by AAA guys in this weight class. If he prevails, I think that's going to suggest something about where he is going into that AA, postseason.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong about that. I would agree with you there. And to kind of switch gears and go up to heavyweight, it's a completely different story in my mind. You got Trevor Gallagher from Gettysburg, who is your top seed here, who I'm a very big fan of. Last year, he had a very good year, led that Gettysburg team to a pretty strong finish. He was a regional 4th place finisher. He's your top seed. Troy Mack from Downingtown West is your 2nd seed. He's good, but Gallagher, I think, is the clear favorite here. Nathan Rauch from Milton is a interesting one to watch at the 5th seed. Ben Krause from Salisbury Township is your 4th. Blake Fisher from OJR is your third seed here. But really, I look at the 285 weight class and I say, if Trevor Gallagher doesn't win this, we got some problems. Like I think he should. When we look at from a ranking standpoint, it's like, all right, Trevor Gallagher is supposed to win this. If he doesn't, like, what are we doing here? And that's just me speaking freely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's a deserving favorite. He's done, everything short of really making a deep postseason run. So what he's all about. You saw him a couple weeks ago. He lost, and it brought this all-time series with Leighton Schmick from Carlisle, who's another one
they've gone back like
capable
100 times.
Yeah, so they're 2-2 against each other just in varsity competition. So there's a good chance we see them in the district finals, and one or both of them really making a run at trying to get their first state medal. And I think there is a pretty good drop off to everybody else here. One I'm watching for is Julian Dotson from Boiling Springs. He's coming from the AA ranks. I think he is a confidence building match or two away from getting up to another level. And that's what they're hoping for. That's what they're looking for him to grow into that and kind of go out there. So I'm always on watch to see if a kid like this gets that win that he needs that can kind of propel him forward.
Well, I mean, that's coming, and even I would say Avery Coons as well from Chambersburg, a guy who, is looking to, Zach Evans, like you said, was supposed to be the guy at heavyweight, or so that was the plan. But now Avery Coons finds himself starting for Chambersburg at heavyweight. Look, Chambersburg's a tough team. And District 3 and AAA is more wide open than what we expected, in my opinion. They, the traditional CD and CVs aren't the quite traditional Cumber Valleys and Central Dolphins that we know. And I think a team like Hempfield, a team like Chambersburg is really going to be able to push some of these teams here. It's going to be fun, because we saw CD knock off Cumber Valley and we said, well, there's COVID. Well, guess what? It ain't going away. So like, who's going to be available? Who's going to have more depth? Who's going to have more bodies? And look, Gettysburg, the one thing they have is depth, and they've got experience from top to bottom. It may not be, they may not all be regional qualifiers. They all may not be, over 500, but damn it, they can get out there and wrestle, right? So you just never know. And that's what I like about this year in District 3.
It's so wide open. You're always looking for those teams that have, both bonus point scorers, your studs, your hammers, and you're looking for teams that have depth and not just, filling weights 1 through 13, but having plans B and C if something goes sideways, if there's an injury, if there's an illness, if there's a COVID protocol situation. And nobody really checks all those boxes in District 3 right now. Cumberland Valley has gone through a lot so far. Hempfield is one that interests me, that they look to be the closest in terms of having, their share of hammers, 3 or 4 guys, and having a full lineup that they're going to wrestle tough from 1 through 13. Look at Gettysburg in this tournament. From my count, it looked like Sam Rodriguez and Trevor Gallagher are the only top 5 seeds that they've got. But at the end of the year, their formula really plays out nicely in duels. So the road to a District 3 team title is going to go through Gettysburg. But we've seen them with that formula wrestle really, really well in the team setting, and in some of these individual tournament situations, not finishing as highly. And that's kind of what I would expect from them this year too.
Yeah, I mean, Jake Cherry, Tyler Withers, like those are guys that I expect to do well regardless of their seeds here. It's just going to be a matter of who's healthy, right, and who's going to be able to compete. Considering COVID, right? So that's the Trojan Wars. We spent a lot of time on Trojan Wars. I want to touch on some other tournaments that are happening in your area, your coverage area. Conestoga Valley Buckskin Classic, one of my favorites, a tournament that I actually competed in when I was in high school. We always wrestled, or CD wrestled in it maybe once or twice. They're back in it now. And Caesar Rodney was always there when I was there from Delaware. Cumber Valley, or I say Cumber Valley because I see CVs, the Conestoga Valley Buckskin Classic, teams such as Bellefonte, Berlin, CD, Central York, Coatesville, Delaware Military Academy, DeLone Catholic, Exeter, Huntington, Lampeter, Strasburg, LaSalle College. Mifflin County is a run team I'm really looking forward to. Penncrest, Shikellamy, Westchester Ruston, and Westfield, Virginia, who's been there for like ever. They're going to be there as well. So the question that I want to, see answered is can Central Dauphin put together a good tournament? Because Beast of the East, they didn't, right? They did not have individually a good tournament. But this is kind of, this isn't the Beast. So can we see them, make a jump? And Mifflin County, because Mifflin County and Central Dauphin are set to duel next soon. I know that, and that's going to be one good duel. Mifflin County just took out Central Mountain. So I'm excited to see maybe some head-to-head matchups between CD and Mifflin County guys here at the Conestoga Valley Buckskin Classic.
That's one storyline to watch for sure. And you're looking for Central Dauphin. You've got Matt Repos, who was at 138 pounds. I don't yet know what his intentions are for the postseason. I think he's certed for 132. Will he come down? Will he try to stay a little bit more comfortable, a little bit stronger? Ryan Garvick at 160. And then you're looking to figure out where else you could have some hammers. Liam Flanagan, I think he is in your top 6 or 7 in the state as a 106. He's a sophomore now. He's a really good kid. Looking for him to put it all together. And I know, so Jeff Swaggart has said in a couple different situations. So when they wrestle in the postseason, they start their sectional run against a lot of LL type teams, Lancaster Lebanon League type teams. So right. He has said before, so they wrestled in the Solanco Mule Classic to start the year. And now they're wrestling against, your Penn Manors, your Solancos, those types of teams. And I think he likes to get his guys in advance of the postseason, some head-to-head matchups, and maybe some seeding points when they go into the postseason. And that might explain why they're here. It's a more attainable tournament for them. Look, I mean, just facts are facts. And I think he would have told you this going in. They just weren't very well positioned to make an impact at Beast of the East. No, those brackets are too tough. And you saw what the result was. They had one guy, Ryan Garvick, get into day 2, and they just weren't really much of a factor at any of those weights. So it'll be good to see him. And this is a nice tournament with a good little mix. You bring in Belfont in and some guys there. You've got Mifflin County coming in from District 6, Exeter, with a few of the guys that they have there too, and Penn Manor. It's a good mixed tournament of wrestlers from top to bottom, where I think I would expect Central Dauphin to do well.
No, I mean, and again, I'm not saying Central Dauphin because I don't want my old coach Jeff Swaggart to knock on my door and put me through calisthenics, because I did that for 4 years. It's not fun. You're not saying that I was expecting them to do well at Beast. I'm just saying only one of the wrestlers made it to day 2, right? That's not, is the juice worth a squeeze type thing? Like why, why most of your team is going 1 and 2. So it's like, what is it worth, right? Solanco Mule Classic, completely different. I think most of their guys, if not all of them, made it to day 2, and a lot of them placed. So, the Conestoga Valley tournament, I think, like you said, should be a very good benchmark for them and where they are, because, like you said, the road to the District 3 title and section championship starts at the LL teams, right? So it's going to be a good mix of teams here. The Bethlehem Holiday Hurricane Classic, which is a staple in District 11, is also happening, but again, because of COVID, I know at least a few teams are out, Northampton being one of them. I think Shenandoah, New York is out, and there may be some other ones. But locally, for you at least, there's a few good District 3 teams heading there, Hempfield being one of them, Northern Lebanon being another one. I'm super excited to see a guy like Aaron Seidel get it. We saw him just completely dominate the King of Mountain, which moved him up to the number 1 spot in our rankings. Where he's going to fit in with a lot of tough talent there, like Saucon Valley. Warwick is there as well. So you got the Tossi brothers, Marco and Nico. I think both those guys are set to drop down in weight class and wrestle at 106 and 113 respectively. And then Wilson Westlawn is also there. So again, I think the seeding meeting was going on at 7. I was hoping to have seeds by now. I don't. Let me double check my inbox, because if I did, then we could talk about them, but I don't believe I do have them. Yes, I do not have them yet. So once we do, I will certainly release them, and we can, or when I'm allowed to. But that's a tournament that I'm always excited for because it just, you talk about the mix, intermingling, right? I'm a big fan of intermingling, not the CDC, but I'm a big fan of intermingling. You get a lot of different looks there. You get District 1, District 4, District 3, District 11, District 1, all kind of together. It's going to be a fun tournament. And Aaron Seidel is really the talk of the town right now. I think he's just going to be great.
Yeah, and it's a good opportunity for him to kind of keep validating. So, at King of the Mountain, he beats Luke Willishell. He wins that tournament with a 9-0 major in the finals there. Ty Kapusta, I think he beat in the final. So, it's not quite the same. He's not facing top 5 kids from the AAA ranks, but you look at, Colby Martinelli from Penridge. You're looking at Connor Lenahan from Council Rock South, Jordan Williams maybe from Hempfield. Mm-hmm. You've got a nice little group there. Those are all top 15 guys from AAA. So it'll be a good opportunity, I think, for Aaron Seidel. And, I think I'm curious to see how some of these other guys in Northern Lebanon's lineup, your Caden Clarks and Owen Layman's, and see how they fare against some of these other teams. But correct me if I'm wrong, but if we're not seeing Nazareth as your top team there now, Saucon Valley, if they're competing still, I mean,
Saucon's tough, man. They're super tough. Yeah. And Nazareth. I mean, if Nazareth gets Charlie Bunting back, they're in the driver's seat. But do not count out Saucon Valley to push Nazareth in the team race. That is, you know what I'm saying? Like that's just. They're very good. They're very, very good. So, and they can score a lot of points from top to bottom, right? And they can get 10 guys on the medal stand easily, with a lot of them finishing top 3. So, I think looking at the team race, it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out, because you got 2 teams that are just so good in District 11 right now in 2 different classes where, it's going to be fun to watch.
You've got, I mean, and in whole, you've got 3 of the top 8 in AAA, and you've got Saucon Valley, who's your number 1 in AA. So you do have a nice representation. Obviously, a little bit, skews towards District 11 and the eastern part of District 3, but it's a really good group of teams, and a good tough competition that they've run this tournament. Like clockwork, so well for years and years. So I can definitely see if you're a team that you feel like your lineup is ready for it, it's a good tournament to go to. But yeah, it's from my area here, just looking at Northern Lebanon and Warwick, I'm curious to see how they do against some of these top guys.
Well, and like you said, Hempfield too. I mean, don't count out Hempfield, because I'm very high on Hempfield. I'm very impressed with them, and they don't have superstars per se, but from 106 to 285, they're going to battle you all the way through. So if they can stay healthy, and they got some guys on the bench that are really tough too, I'm expecting to see them be a good dual tournament team as opposed to an individual tournament team. But just excited to see some of their guys go head to head with some of those top ranked guys, because you're not going to be able to avoid them at the Hurricane Classic, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. Up and down. I mean, just really hits home that you're looking at this tournament with those teams and those ranked guys, and it not being the biggest show in the state. Right. Just speaking to how good the Powerade is, and how big this week is in terms of trying to get your guys' top competition to push you into January.
Yeah, I mean, this is the week, right? This is a big week for a lot of reasons. One, it's a 2-pound allowance, so we're starting to get guys coming down to a weight that they expect to be in their postseason, but also because this is where you're going to see some of the top guys that you're not going to see again until Hershey, right? Because after the holidays, there's a lot of county tournaments, there's a lot of league tournaments, and there's a lot of dual tournaments, but there aren't a lot of these big individual tournaments from all across the state intermingling. It is more of your local tournaments, right? So this is the test to say, okay, I wrestled him at the Hurricane Classic and I lost 3-2, but I know what I need to do, here in March, because we're going to wrestle in the state quarterfinals. And that's what is beautiful about the holiday tournaments, is because a lot of these matches we may not see again until March, or we may not ever see again, period, because they're in two different classes, right? So it's always fun just to go through and look at them. The Jim Thorpe tournament is also taking place. That's the 50th annual Jim Thorpe tournament, Christmas tournament, which is amazing to see the Jim Thorpe tournament still going along. Upper Dolphins going to be there from your coverage area, Berks Catholic, Cedar Crest, Danville, East Juniata, Meadowbrook Christian's going to be there, North Schuylkill, Shamokin. And there should be some good teams there as well. And also you got the Governor Mifflin tournament, which Boyertown is there. Obviously Governor Mifflin, Conestoga, Elizabethtown. You got Ole Valley there, Middletown, Mechanicsburg. So a good mix of different teams there to kind of top things off, if you will. And it's going to be, there's a lot of good wrestling this weekend, or this week, should I say. I feel like it's a weekend, but it's not. There's a lot of good wrestling going on. And if you stay tuned, if you can take a break at 9:00, Greg Warnock and I are going to be previewing the Powerade tournament. And I'm telling you, COVID barring, this is going to be the best Powerade in the history of Powerade. It's going to be amazing. But
which is saying a lot. It's saying a lot.
But COVID could ruin it potentially. Even if, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say that. It's not going to ruin it, but it's not, it's not going to be quite as great if we lose some of the folks that I'm hearing. So we'll talk about that at 9:00. You got to tune back in at 9:00 for the War Up podcast. But Dustin, it's been a pleasure talking with you. I haven't been able to see your face, but maybe we can work on that if you come back on the show ever again. I don't know if I'll let you back on, but if I do, maybe we can work on getting your face fixed, so we're not just staring at a blank screen that says DH on it. Like you're
I gotta fix this. I gotta fix this dial-up modem. I don't know if it's my dial-up or if it's my phone cord that I'm using to plug into it.
Something, man.
Next time, I wish I could do something with my typewriter to get connected to you, but unfortunately,
your hamster's running on the wheel there, trying to get you going. Like
that's what it feels.
It's amazing you're employed. It's amazing you're employed. It really is. I hope you're not telling your boss that you're on this, because if he hears all this stuff that you're doing, it's bad stuff. It's gonna be fun. So we'll keep it locked in here to PA Power Wrestling on Rockfin. PA Power Wrestle on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you name it, we've got it. Again, we've got a lot of stuff coming out from Powerade. And again, state rankings will be updated tomorrow for AA and AAA, state rankings only. And this is with all the tournaments, with the guys dropping down in weight class. We're going to do one quick update here before we get into the meat of the holiday season. And then we'll get back to it the following week for updated regional and state rankings. So it's a fun time of the year, Dustin. I'm excited for it. And again, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be here. Always good to try to talk some District 3, talk about my wheelhouse in front of your audience. I'm always amazed at the work that you guys are doing there. State rankings are the benchmark everywhere, and really a good thing for all of us, and you're updating them before all these tournaments start to get a feel for who's who going into these things, before we see these individual matchups, to understand the magnitude of all of them. If you're not subscribed to PA Power on Rockfin, you're probably not doing wrestling right.
You're not doing Pennsylvania wrestling right. That's for damn sure. So yeah, if you're not tuned into us on Rockfin, a lot of good content there, as you said, Dustin. I appreciate the plug. And again, appreciate the comments. So, hey, I don't want to see you walking away with a Trojan Warriors helmet because you cut down to 215 and end up winning the tournament unattached. All right. So I don't want to see that. All right.
Well, as I'm driving through a fast food lane, the drive-through, and I get winded pulling my wallet out at Taco Bell. I don't think I'm a factor here.
Okay.
But I might be able to get the weight part of it under control.
All right. We'll work on that. I'll get you on something. All right.
Great.
All right, Dustin, good talking to you. And again, stay tuned. 9:00, we'll be talking the Powerade tournament on War Up here on Rockfin. For those of you who do not see you again, stay tuned in and keep it classy, wrestling fans. We'll see you soon.